Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video with On Point Politics. And today I'm going to be covering the 2024 presidential election based on historical polling errors and what that would result in the 2024 presidential election. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And so, pretty much, guys, as of right now, we have a blank electoral map here. I'm going to be filling in the safe states as of right now that would be classified safe for either candidate. Those would be Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, the Dakotas, Nebraska at large, with the 1st and 3rd congressional district, with Kansas, Oklahoma, as well as Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Missouri, West Virginia, South Carolina, Alaska, Maine's 2nd congressional district. And for the safe Democratic states, we would have California, Oregon, Washington, Illinois, New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, DC, and Rhode Island, as well as the state of Hawaii. That would put these states in play for Donald Trump and Joe Biden, with Maine's 1st congressional district going Democrat. And so as of right now, we're going to be going west to east and see what polling errors would potentially cause the 2024 presidential election to look like. Starting with the state of Nevada, according to 538, Donald Trump is leading in the state by 7.2 percentage points, which is a massive lead considering that Biden won the state in 2020 by 2.4 percentage points. And so, based out of the polling error from 2020, we could see that Biden was ahead in the state by 5.3, and he only ended up winning it by 2.4. That's around a 2.9 percentage polling miss. And so, if we were to look at Nevada and apply that, we could basically put it as borderline, almost borderline safe. It would be around a 9.5 point victory for the former president in this scenario. If we look at the state of Arizona, we're going to see that Donald Trump continues to expand his lead with a 4.3 percentage point victory as of right now, according to the polling. And if we look at 2020, the polls actually had Biden ahead by around 2.6 percentage points. He won it by around 0.3 percentage points in 2020. If you look at that, that's around a 2.3 percentage point polling miss in favor of Biden. And if you were to apply that here, Donald Trump would be winning the state by around 6 to 7 percentage points as of right now. If we look at the state of Colorado, you're going to notice that there is not an aggregate for the state of Colorado. But if you were to average out all of the latest polls, it would probably average out to about 8 or 7 points. We're going to use 7.5 as a fair estimate from quick math. And so, if we were to look at the 2020 polling, we could see that Biden was ahead by 12.5%. He ended up winning the state by 13.5. So that actually overestimated Trump by a point. So that would put the state as an 8 point victory for the incumbent president. If we look at the state of New Mexico, the polling actually looks pretty good for him as of right now. He was ahead by 11.7. He ended up winning by 10.1%. So it's slightly in favor of Biden. You could see here a +5 poll, a +8 poll, +11 poll. And these are polls from like May, but however, these may actually be all the way back from 2023. So if we were to average out this, 8 point victory and the 5 point win, it would be around a 6.5 point win. And if the polling error was around a point or so, that basically, if you were to apply that polling error, New Mexico would actually fall right below a 5 point victory in the Electoral College. Texas is also pretty interesting because if you look, he was barely leading in the aggregate in 2020, 1.1%, and he ended up winning it by 5.6. That's basically a 4.5 percentage point miss. And Donald Trump's ahead by 10. So if you were to apply that polling error, Donald Trump is basically winning Texas by around 15 percentage points, which would be a huge victory in the state of Texas. If we look at the state of Iowa, we're going to see that Donald Trump is continuing to expand his lead there. There's not even an aggregate for it. That's how outside of a competitive range it even is. If we were to average these out, it would practically be giving us around a 10 to 12 point average. Let's say it's at around an 11 point average. In 2020, Trump was ahead by 1.3. He ended up winning it by 8.2. That's around a 7 point miss. And so he would be winning the state of Iowa by 17 to 18 points, according to that polling miss. If we go to the state of Ohio, we're going to see in 2020, Trump was ahead by 0.8. He ended up winning by 8.0, which is around a 7.8 percentage point miss. And if we look at the aggregate right now, he's ahead by 9.6. That actually puts the state around a 15 to 16 point victory for the former president, cementing those states as safe Republican states for 2024. If we were to look at Florida, you'd actually see he has another huge polling lead in the state. He's actually leading here by 11 points. He's leading here by more than he's even leading in Ohio, which is very, very appalling for the Biden campaign. And Biden was ahead by 2.5%. Trump won by 3.4 in 2020. That's a 4.9 percentage point miss. And so if you were to apply that, Donald Trump would be winning the state by around 15 points. It would be around a 14.9 percentage point victory as of right now. If we look at the state of Georgia, we're going to see Donald Trump's ahead by 6.4%. Biden was currently ahead in the aggregate by 1.2. Biden went up by 0.2. So that's around a point miss. So with that polling error in mind, Donald Trump would be winning the state of Georgia by 7.4 percentage points, which would be a huge shift from the 2020 presidential election. If we were to look at the state of North Carolina, you would see Donald Trump's ahead by 6.4% or 6.6%. Biden was ahead by 1.9. Donald Trump ended up winning by 1.3. So that's around a 2.5 point miss, so to speak. And so if you were to apply that, Donald Trump would be winning the state by 8 to 9 points in this scenario. If we were to look at the state of Virginia, you're going to see that Donald Trump, if you were to average these polls out, he's actually only ahead. Biden's only ahead in the state by probably like a point and a half, maybe 2 points. So we're going to use the 2 point scenario as a fair estimation. Biden was ahead by 11.8%. Donald Trump actually won it by 10.1 percentage points as of right now. And that's around a 1.8 percentage point, swing in favor of Biden. And right now I have Trump leading by around 1.1%, 2%. So if you were to basically apply that polling error, Biden would be ahead in Virginia by a tilt margin, which would be a humongous shift from 2020, as he actually won it by 10.1%, even in the safe category in the 2020 presidential election. If we were to look at a state like New Hampshire, which has been reliably Democratic, in 2020 and has been trending to the left, if you were to average out, this poll would technically be Biden +1, Biden +3, around there, it'd be around a 2 point victory for Biden as of right now. Biden was severely overestimated in the state of New Hampshire by around, almost 4 percentage points. And if Biden's ahead by, 1.5, 2 points, if he were to be overestimated by 4 points, that actually puts the state of New Hampshire in the lean Republican column for Donald Trump. And he would already be eclipsing 270 electoral votes without even me touching the Rust Belt in this scenario. If we were to look at Maine, it's actually quite interesting, but Donald Trump in 2020 was down in Maine by quite a bit, 13 points. He ended up winning it by 9.1%, or Biden won it by 9.1%. So that's around a 4 point polling error. And Donald Trump, basically, if you were to see, Trump +2, Trump +6, Biden +1, that ends up averaging out to about, a basically 4 point Trump, polling lead in the state of Maine. And if he was underestimated in the state by around 3.9%, Donald Trump would actually be ahead in the state of Maine by around 7 points, 6 to 7 points, which would be a crazy shift from 2020. It would basically be the reverse of Maine from the 2020 presidential election. If we were to look at the state of Wisconsin, we could see that the polling error here has always been super awful. Donald Trump's ahead here by 1.5%. Biden in 2020 was ahead by 8.4. He only won it by 0.6%. That's around an 8 point miss. It's around an 8 point, almost an 8.2 percentage point miss in the polling. And so if you were to apply that here, Donald Trump would actually be winning Wisconsin by around 9 percentage points, which would be a huge victory in the state of Wisconsin. If we were to look at the state of Pennsylvania, Donald Trump's ahead by 2.2%. If you look at 2020, he was ahead by 4.7. Biden only won it by 1.2. That's a 3.6 percentage point, polling miss. If you were to apply that to this, Donald Trump would actually be winning the state of Pennsylvania just above 5 percentage points. And if you were to look at the state of Michigan, you're going to see Donald Trump's ahead here by 0.8. According to 538, the polling error in Michigan was pretty big, 7.9%. Biden won it by 2.8. That's around a 5.1 percentage point miss in the polling. And so if you were to apply that to the current aggregate, Donald Trump would actually be winning Michigan by more than Pennsylvania even. It would be the second most Republican state in the Rust Belt. And now for Minnesota, what's pretty interesting is that I actually did calculate the average on RCP, but according to 538, it is a 2.6 percentage point lead for Biden. If we look at 2020, Biden was overestimated by around 2 percentage points, 2.1% to be exact, and he's ahead by 2.6. And so if you apply that polling error, Biden actually barely wins, the state of Minnesota according to this polling error. And if we look at Nebraska's second congressional district, we're going to see that Donald Trump is ahead by 3 points. If we look at 2020, the polls had him, basically at 3.8%. He ended up winning it by 6.6. And so this actually ends up going backwards a little bit. It actually ends up being a tilt Donald Trump state, or at least a district. It would end up being going tilt for Donald Trump. It would basically come down to the wire, like 0.2%. So as of right now, guys, this is what the polling errors would suggest would result in the 2024 presidential election. Donald Trump would win with 219 electoral votes to Joe Biden's 219, with Minnesota and Virginia, as well as New Mexico and New Hampshire, being the competitive states this cycle, which is what my model actually suggests. My model does suggest that he is in fact winning Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, and Nevada by over 5 points. And it suggests that New Mexico, Minnesota, Virginia, New Hampshire, Nebraska, and Maine at large are actually the real competitive states this cycle. If you guys did enjoy this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and make sure to go ahead and follow the Twitter and join the Discord in the description down below. And I will see you guys very, very soon.